What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Talk to Me here on notfest.com. As always, I am Josh with Toomey, joined by the one, the only Griff Akin. Chris, how are we doing?
Awesome, man. How you doing, man? You've recovered yet?
Not just yet. I have a day off from actual work tomorrow, and I do plan to sleep in after the gym in the morning. So it's been a week, man. It's been a very long week since the last time we talked.
Dude, you used to tour and play 6 days a week. Now you just go hang out for 4 days and you're ready to die.
Yeah, but when I played, it was, I could sleep in the van in between the shows, and then I could, hang out backstage and not do anything. Like, I did 16 interviews in the 4 days at Louder Than Life, and that's setting up the camera, getting all the, getting your brain ready for an interview and all that stuff, man. It was nuts.
Yeah. Dude, I've done it. I've done it at Rock on the Range a few times. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, and then you can say how you feel. I'm done with it. I am officially throwing my hands up and acknowledging I'm waving the white flag. I'm too old. I'm too old to do this anymore. I can't go.
Right.
Not like that anymore. If I was to do it now, I would stay in the tent except for like 2 bands. I would see like 2 bands a day, maybe. And the rest of the time would be just chilling in the air conditioning.
Right. No, the one thing that was nice, I mean, where the media tent is at Louder Than Life, you're right next to the main stage. So even if you don't go watch the band, you can at least hear the bands really
Right.
well. This year they had 6 stages.
Ugh.
And they were basically grouped as like 2 stages at each area. And so 2 main stages, 2 kind of side stages, and then they had the third kind of unsigned, new band stage. They actually had 2 stages over there too, so they could kind of go back and forth too. But it was cool.
That is too much for me, man. I remember the old days even of like Ozfest and whatnot, and
Yeah.
they did Ozfest a few years here at the place called Blossom Music Center, which is one of these outdoor on a hill, and there was 2 stages there. There was the big stage, the main stage, and then all the way up the hill and kind of in the back, what is normally like the parking, they had hollowed out and turned into the second stage.
Yeah.
So you spent the whole day either moshing, which I was all about the moshing. So I would spend most of the day moshing wherever I was, but it was either moshing or running up this big ass hill to go and mosh on a cement slab.
Right.
And it was by the end of that, and it was back when it was a 1-day deal. And by the end of that 1-day deal, it was go home and just, automatically the next day had to be off of whatever job I had, because there was no way. There was just no, I drank too much. I moshed too much. I got beaten to shit. I'd come out with black eyes and stuff from getting elbows to the face and all that stuff from the mosh pit. There was no chance to go to work. And, you're doing 4 days of it. Ooh, no, thank you.
Well, I wasn't there to mosh and drink and all that stuff. We finally, I think, had a few drinks on the Sunday, but I learned very long ago that I cannot drink and do interviews at the same time. So I just kind of they even had open bar in the media tent. Like, it was open bar. You just had to tip or whatever. So I mean, and they had a full open bar too. It was, the beers, all the beer you wanted, all the mixed drinks you wanted and stuff like that. So yeah, it could have gotten hairy real quick.
Boy, it might have been a good thing that I passed then. I would have never come out of the tent.
Yeah, every year they've stepped the media tent up, and a couple of years ago it was you could drink all the the Monster waters or whatever they had,
right.
And then like the year after that was like water plus Red Bull, and then I think last year was just another Red Bull kind of year, but then this year, yeah, they had full open bar.
Nice.
It was even like, you go over there and you're like, so everything's free? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, so like everything's free. Like, it's still almost too good to be true.
Dude, they're doing that so that the bands will come through. That's 100% the reason. The bands are like, well, we can stay on the bus and they'll bring us booze, or you can go out to the press tent and just get booze. So the bands I'm sure the bands drank more than you guys did.
Well, I think it was a lot of the crew were actually the ones drinking.
Okay.
Because I noticed some of the crew guys that I know were over there partaking
Sure.
day to day. But kind of running down the weekend for me, and the first interview with Chris Garza of Suicide Silence will be out tomorrow, which is
Cool.
Friday, and then after that, every Wednesday there's going to be another interview. So basically, for the next 3 months, there'll be interviews from Louder Than Life on
Nice.
Wednesday. So you get my studio interview on Tuesday, my Louder Than Life interview on Wednesday, and then me and Chris Akin talking nonsense on Thursday. So
Sweet.
all kinds of Toomey all week, all Toomey all.
All time.
But looking at the list here, Thursday I interviewed Monty Pittman from Ministry,
Okay.
two of the ladies from Plush, Mariah and Ashley.
Just the bassist, blonde hair.
Believes- yeah. And
Yeah,
then the
Ashley.
most of New Year's Day sat down.
Okay.
They were pretty cool. And then Type A Houston, which is Lars Ulrich's son's band.
Okay.
They sat down and they did an interview towards the end of the night, man. And they were actually pretty cool, man. Because I had them and Vended. I had Vended on Friday, so I
Right.
kind of talked to them a little bit about having, seeing all the kind of the kids bands, like Lars's kids bands, and
Right.
even James Hetfield's kids got a band, and Ty Trujillo's in a bunch of bands, and then Vended's on the thing. So we talked a little bit about that stuff, and both bands gave pretty good answers to that kind of line of questioning, because I just didn't want to sit down and be like, so tell me about being Lars Ulrich's sons.
Right.
You've done enough interviews to know you don't want to be that guy. You want to. You can throw in a question. I mean, when you interviewed Rob Trujillo's wife, you kind of came at it a certain way, and you didn't just go like, so what's it like being a wife of Metallica?
Well, no, when I interviewed her, Chloe, I did almost. I think I did 30 minutes, and 25 of it was her band.
Right.
To where at least me throwing it in at the end was not like, okay, it's the only reason I did the interview. I mean, I tried to give her band that respect, and it's a respect thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this, dude. So many of the kids bands, nobody wants to talk to them about their bands. Let's be honest. How many of the journalists that were in that room had heard Type A Houston or fucking Vended?
Right.
Probably you. And to go and do an interview with them and then just say, oh, Lars Hetfield, Metallica, they don't want to hear that. Slipknot, they don't want to hear that. They want you to at least give them the respect of, well, I'm here with my band.
Right.
And then they'll answer the other stuff if you give them respect first. That's the approach I always take.
I thought it was funny that Type A Houston did interviews at roughly, I think mine was 6:45 p.m. on Thursday. And by the time we got home, which was probably 10:30, they were an interview from the press tent was already on Blabbermouth.
Wow.
From Type A Houston about, it was like, Type A Houston talks growing up around Metallica or something like that. Oh, and also I spoke to Apocalyptica. Funny thing with them was they weren't scheduled to be interviewed, and the tour manager of Apocalyptica walks up to me and goes, "Hey, my name is Jeff," and I had, I guess I look a little bit different than I did 20 years ago, but the beard and the longer hair, and I was wearing sunglasses, and I know this dude Jeff for a long time. Like,
sure.
And he walks up to me and he was like, "Yeah, my name is Jeff." And I pulled down my sunglasses, like, "Yeah, no shit." And he was like, "Oh my God." Like, it's pretty crazy. He's like, he's like, "Yeah, I'm out tour managing Apocalyptico. Can you do an interview with them?" And I was like, that's the one thing that got me this whole weekend.
Right.
And I love the hustle, and I love, because there was that whole unsigned up and coming band stage.
Sure.
And they were all those bands were in the tent all day long. And like they kept asking like for interviews. And I'm like, I just kind of kept having to say, like, I've got a schedule, like at this, like, because they had the press list sent to them. I know they did because a lot of them did reach out and say, "Hey, can we get an interview?" Which I did. I think 2 of the bands. I mean, I didn't like just totally block out, doing some of the younger bands, but they just kept coming up and asking for interviews, and I'm like, you guys, like, I need something to work with. I can't just sit, I don't want to sit down with a band that I don't know anything about.
Who are you and what do you do?
Like, where did you get your band name? How did you guys meet? Why?
Right.
All that stuff. You don't want to do that. And I'm like,
Sure.
So I felt bad, and I've been in that situation before. Being in an up and coming band and just trying trying, but I got some emails from some of the bands, but I didn't get as much as you probably should have. And I felt bad saying, like, I'm on a tight schedule and blah blah blah, and then I'm just sitting there, I'm playing on my phone.
Nice.
But
yeah, but still, if you don't know anything about the band, how good of an interview can you possibly do?
That's what I was more worried about. If, like I said, if we sit down and it's just this interview of where did you get your band name? Where are you guys from? Like that type of stuff. Nobody wants to see that. They don't want to do that interview. I don't want to do that interview. And but go and find some of the newer bands and let me know what you guys think.
Sure. Well, and dude, I mean, it's hard. Like you're saying Apocalyptica. Yeah. I would struggle with that. And you know me, I listen to everything. Right. I would struggle mightily with that because I certainly don't listen to cello metal.
Well, that was one where they're like, "Can you do Apocalyptica?" And I'm like, "All right, well, I know enough about them to do an interview." So
right, they're the cello guys, right?
Yeah.
Cello
the cello band or whatever. So I did the typical, when did you realize Metallica knew who you guys were? They had actually done a song with the guy from 3 Days Grace, who I had on the podcast a while back. So I kind of talked about that a little bit. Actually, Corey Taylor did a song with them. So I talked about that. I threw together, 8 to 10 minute interview, which is all you really need to do with some of this stuff. But
sure.
Yeah, it was, I think them and actually the Chris Garza from Suicide Silence interview. I think he was the only other one that wasn't scheduled, but he has a podcast that I listened to. And so that was easy. That was just, and he was wearing a Cold Chamber shirt. Before we even did the interview, we were talking about new metal, and his favorite band of all time is Korn. I mean, I can nail that interview all day.
You could you don't even need to know his music at all,
right? And we could just sit down and be like, "So you love Korn? Me too."
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But yeah, so Thursday was pretty awesome. The bands I got to see of the day, I'm kind of going through. Plush opened the day. I thought that's one thing about this whole festival is even first band on the bill, a few thousand people watching. Like that's cool. It's never just an empty space. Like it's people are there to party and have a good time and go see the show and get there early and stay all day. I mean, it was nuts how big the crowd was for Plush, and they were 12:30, 1 o'clock band. It was crazy.
Wow. That is how'd they sound? Good?
Sounded great. Everything seemed to be going pretty well. Cool. They busted out an Alice in Chains cover, and they did, they do what they do, man. They were great.
Yeah, that's cool. Very good, man.
I saw New Year's Day. They had some really bad technical difficulties. I don't know what was going on with them. But that might be in one of the roughest sets I think I've seen. And then when I interviewed them later on, they were talking about how they've just been kind of having like a shit month. Like they had all their gear stolen at one point, and they finally got it all back due to the local police finally, tracked it down in South Carolina or something like that.
Wow.
They've been having a tough time.
Right. Might be time to come off the road.
Right. Ministry was fantastic as always. And the one thing with Ministry, the last 2 times I've seen them, which I think might be the only 2 times I've ever seen them, but it seems like a greatest hit set. They're not busting out a bunch of new songs. They're like Psalm 69 and New World Order and all that stuff, man. They are playing the hits on this one.
It's interesting about that band though. They've put out a lot of great music.
Yeah.
After the hits. Like most of those records, especially all those George Bush hating records, are fantastic. The whole No W and all that stuff. That's all really, really good music. And I know Al has said a couple of times, "This is it, I'm retiring." And then there's another album like 2 years later. But I love Ministry. One of my favorite times ever was I got into a political debate with Al for 2 hours on the metal
Wow.
show back when I was on MMS. Like it
Nice.
was planned. It was a planned debate. And it was funny because we ended up having to hang up on him because he wouldn't stop swearing because he was so mad at me. You know, he was
Nice.
so mad at me because we were just going at it. And he ended up going, well, fuck you. And we're like, you can't say that. He's the fuck I can't fucking say. You know, he was just like, blah, 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 blah. It was great.
Nice.
One of my more fun times on the radio.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. The other, I think the band that stole the night was Tenacious D.
Really?
Yeah, like they had a set planned out. They had it just my wife's not a big fan of them, but I grew up loving them back in the day, you know, when they first started coming out and popping up on HBO and all that other nonsense. But they came out and they were just awesome, and Jack Black was killing it, and you know they kind of had a scripted set, you know, and from start to finish, man, because we were gonna watch, I think, like half Tenacious D and then go watch Bring Me the Horizon, and we ended up just watching all of Tenacious D and then going to watch 9 Inch Nails.
Nice.
But Tenacious D was pretty amazing.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan either. I'm with your chick on that one. I'm not a big fan, but I've heard everybody I've ever talked to has seen him always says it's a fun show. So
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of GWAR in a way. You know, I'm not a fan, but I like seeing them.
Right. Which I you know, they'll be coming up in a day or two on this festival.
Okay.
9 Inch Nails, this is the first time I've ever seen them. They were pretty awesome. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, obviously they were amazing to watch. But the one thing that fucking them, and we did catch the very tail end of Bring Me the Horizon just because of the time lapse or whatever.
Sure.
But both like camera operators for the big, you know, the big screens on the side of the stage that lets you see what's on stage. Like, do you remember when Motley Crue came back together and they did like Shout at the Devil on the VMAs or something, and then like they made it black and white, made it look crazy.
Yeah,
you remember that?
Yeah,
and you're just like, stop it, man! I just want to watch them play. Like,
right.
I don't want to see a fake music video. Like, just film them.
Yeah.
And both bands, but 9 Inch Nails and Bring Me the Horizon, both had like all these effects on the screen and stuff. And 9 Inch Nails was almost unwatchable because the guy was on stage with the camera, getting up in Trent's face and going over to the keyboard guy and the bass player. Right. I mean, like it was hard to watch, and I was just like, all right, I just want to see the band play. Just show me what's going. This is too artsy. This is too artsy for 70,000 people. Stop it.
Yeah, no shit. And that's a shame too, because they are so intense. I mean, I've seen them, a zillion times.
Yeah.
And they're always so intense. That would suck to have some fucking studio guy wrecking it for you. No thanks.
Yeah, it was a tough watch, but we you know, we had a good time watching it. The other shout out is the band Mag Dylan. They were back in the press tent and took a photo with me. They were very nice, and I actually caught a little bit of their set. They did a nice Alanis Morissette cover, kind of heavied it up. Female singer in that band too, so they were good dudes, good dudes, good ladies, and so a little shout out from Mag Dylan from the
There you go.
Life.
Wow, there you go. And that was day one.
That's just day one. So Friday. Friday was the day. Like I had so many, let's see, just running it down. I had In Flames, Amigo the Devil, Vendid, Suicide Silence, a band called Until I Wake. They were pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, those were all the interviews. And then like the whole time we were back there, actually Corey Taylor was in the tent for a very long time that day. Like he has a Corey Taylor Foundation.
Okay.
And they did a like a Wounded Warriors type meet and greet. You know, you could tell a lot of military.
Sure.
He was back there hamming it up with them for a good hour at least. And then, you know, signed a guitar and gave it to one of them and all that stuff. And then he had a full on meet and greet, which was funny to watch. Like people were just like the first girl that walked up to him, like got on her hands and knees and started like, you know, like, we're not worthy, like type stuff, like, but for real, like, I mean, like tears in her eyes and everything else. And
now is he in or out of costume?
Out. Yeah, he was just regular. He was regular ass Corey Taylor. But I did speak with him for a little bit. We talked for a little bit. I got, you know, told him I worked for Knotfest and And I told him that I used to play in Primer 55 because the tour after I left in 2008, he jumped up on stage with Primer and did like a Pink Floyd cover. And
Nice.
I was just like, I was like, yeah, I work for the Knot Fest and do the podcast and I used to play bass in Primer 55, and he was like, no shit, and just started laughing like, and I was like, yeah, the first tour we did after I was in the band, you jumped up once, and he was like, dude, I was boozed out of my mind back then. And just had a good time with it, but and we actually talked about our kids because my son does been doing the rap stuff and throwing it up on
Sure.
Spotify. And obviously his kid's out doing Vended and
Sure.
just jokingly having dad moments with Corey Taylor about, I was like, does Griff, not listen to you about music when it comes to, maybe you guys should do this. And you're like, whatever, dad.
Nice.
He's like, oh yeah. He's like Griff's like that all the time. But I will say I ended up interviewing Simon, who is Clown's kid, and
Okay.
Griff, who is Corey's kid. They were the two on the podcast, and they're the two guys that are invented. And Griffin couldn't have been any cooler.
That's
he
cool.
was super nice. And I ended up there was a woman back there that started talking to Melissa a lot. It was like because she worked for like some paper in Lexington, and she came up to Melissa and was asking like, who is this, who's that. She didn't know who anybody was back there.
Right.
So she saw Corey Taylor, and I was like, that's Corey Taylor. He's a singer of Slipknot. She's like, is that a big deal? I'm like, yeah, that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, well, and then like the drummer from Shinedown was back there for a second.
Okay.
I was like, well, normally if you don't know Slipknot, you probably know Shinedown because of the
Sure.
radio. I was like, that's the guy from Shinedown. She's like, is that a big deal? I'm like, wow, you really don't know who any of these people are back here.
Who did she think was a big deal at the event? Like the whole 4 days? Kiss?
I think she just came for the one day. I think she was just covering it for whatever.
Okay.
Because they do also do Bourbon and Beyond, which is the weekend before, and that's like
Okay.
the more White Stripes and Pearl Jam and all that stuff.
Right.
So I think she just did both weekends, and she was probably more into the weekend before.
Okay.
But so I was standing there and I was walking around and I bumped into Griff again, and I was like, do you realize there's a woman here that has no idea who Corey Taylor is? And he just started laughing, and he was telling me his stories about kids at his high school, like, so your dad's famous, huh? He was having the definite off mic talk about kids at his high school that would bring up that his dad is Corey Taylor, and
wow,
like, well, my dad's famous too. He's a drug dealer, and like, what are you talking about? He was just, but he was cool about it. You could tell he didn't mind talking about his dad. Now Simon,
sure.
He was just like he didn't want anything to do with dad talk.
Wow, nice.
Because the tour manager said when I sat down with him, he's like, hey, can you just give them a rundown of what you're going to talk about so they can kind of be ready or something like that. And I was like, talk about the new video, talk about the tour, talk about, kind of the last year of the band. And I just threw in there, I was like, we'll keep the dad talk to a minimum. And Simon was like, yeah, he's like, let's not do that. Like, let's not talk about it at all. I was like,
nice.
all right. At least he threw it out there. But
yeah.
But Bjorn from In Flames was really cool. He was
now, how much In Flames music do you know? Are you an In Flames fan or not at all?
It's one of those things where I've been listening to it and I should be like a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them in like 2011, I think, with like Hatebreed.
Okay.
And I thought they were great that night. Everything I've heard is great. I just don't think I've dove into In Flames, which is one of those bands where every time I listen to them, I'm like, I should love this. Like, I don't know why I don't,
Yeah. I love them. I'm a total fan.
Yeah.
You can give me Clayman, which I know is a very old album at this point, but it's still the album. And Come Clarity was another really good one too. So I do love me some In Flames.
When I was listening on Spotify, obviously the most downloaded song is on Clayman.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't even like ring a bell. Normally there's like those bands that have even like that underground hit.
Mm-hmm.
The one song or something like that. But In Flames is one of those bands where I just haven't dove in enough. But I will say this, Bjorn was awesome. Like
That's cool.
I was having a rough morning, and he was my first interview, and he like he like changed my mood for the day. Like we just had a great talk and a great chat, and he was just kind of self-deprecating a little bit too, and
Sure.
just even we talked a little bit about the pandemic. I try not to do that as much just because it's just dates interviews so bad.
Mhm.
But he kind of brought it up about when the pandemic first started to hit, like how worthless he felt. And that was like a super honest answer
Sure.
about because he was like, what am I even doing here? Like what is my purpose in life? And all that stuff, man. And it just seemed to it just seemed very genuine and very real. And it was a really cool talk.
That's cool, man. I that's the one of everybody you interviewed that I need to listen to. I love that band. I've interviewed, what's his name? The singer, Anders.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him a few times. I've never interviewed Bjorn, so I'm anxious to hear that.
Well, I know a guy, so
Oh, there you go. Cool.
Amigo the Devil was great. I don't know how much Amigo the Devil you've listened to, but
Not a lot.
that's one of those when I started listening to them, and they're kind of like got that Johnny Cash vaudeville Elvis kind of all that
Sure.
stuff. Like they're just kind of a almost like a breath of fresh air because you listen to so much metal at these things. It's like
Mhm.
metal, 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 and then this guy pops up, and the first song on the latest album is like he could be doing Elvis crooning, and it has like total like I kept going back to like vaudeville and just
Mhm.
show tunes or something. Like I mean, it's amazing how good it was. Then I posted a photo of me and Amigo, and my daughter was just like, "Oh my god, I love Amigo the Devil." So
Nice.
now I'm cool.
Now you're cool, Dad, for well, for it's probably worn off by now, right?
Right? No, yeah,
Been
no,
3 days.
yeah. um, but of the Slipknot guys, Clown was back there for a while. I went up to him, talked to him for a little bit, told him I worked for Knotfest and did the podcast, and he said, "Thank you for all your hard work." So no
Mhm.
idea if he knows who I am, but he said, "Thank you for all your hard work." V Man was back there, talked to him for a little bit, and I was near Jay Weinberg for a little bit. Never spoke to him, but some of the Slipknot guys were rolling around back there. That was kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty surprising, really, because whenever they show up, everybody, kinda hounds them. So
Yeah.
and where was that the case? Were they like, having all the vultures coming after them?
It really wasn't that. I mean, it's the media tent, so you're getting a lot of photos, which is funny because I
Mhm.
didn't take a photo with any of them, which I guess I was because I was getting a ton of photos. I was like, that's the one thing I'm gonna get. I'm gonna grab as many photos as I can just for Instagram, Twitter, and all that other
Sure.
nonsense. And the one band I don't get any photos with is Slipknot.
Oh, why would you? It's not like we're on their platform or anything.
Right. But yeah, and I spoke to Randy from Lamb of God for a little bit, and that was interesting. And Mark Morton was back there for a little bit, talked to him for a second. The Mastodon guys were back there, but I never actually spoke to them.
Right.
GWAR showed up like they always do in full regalia, and that's
Sure.
amazing. That's just awesome to be around. I mean, I as well as I do that I'm not the biggest GWAR fan,
Sure. I'm not
but
either, but
the just kind of seeing them in full costume, just kind of roaming around and talking to everybody is pretty funny.
yeah, they're that band. I don't know anybody that likes their music. Not one person in my whole circle likes.
Right.
There's nobody that's ever said, "Oh, you got to hear Scum Dogs of the Universe, man. That's like killer." No
Yeah.
one says that. But of all my friends and myself included, I'll go see them anytime they're anywhere near me
Yeah.
because they're fun. I don't know any of the songs. I don't care. It's still, jizz squirting all over the crowd and blood and killing, and
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, but it's fun. It's good stuff.
I remember I back in the flyering days, like we flyered a GWAR show and
Mhm.
we didn't go to it. We just stood outside the exit at the end of the
Sure.
show and handed out flyers. And we got called out so many times, like you guys weren't even in there, were you? Like, yeah, maybe because we were completely clean and everybody
Yeah,
else was
clean.
covered in blood. Great show. I mean,
Mhm.
we went to check them out as always. Just a incredible show to watch.
Sure.
Um, and then Meshuggah came on right after them. Their visual show was amazing too. Um, Helmet, Helmet kind of did the hit set too, man. I think they played like one newer song, but
Okay.
I mean they did Just Another Victim, and they played all the good stuff off of Betty and Aftertaste and
Right. Meantime
and all that
right.
stuff. Yeah, it's just a great set. I'm trying to see what else I was in the media tent for a lot of this day. Just because I mean there's just so much going on.
Sure.
A Dead was great. Amigo the Devil was great. We actually went out and got to watch Vended play, and that was one thing I was talking to them about. And that'll be in the interview. But you know, a year ago this time was not Fest Iowa, and that's where we went out and did the Twitch stream, did the live stream all day, and you know they were there and they played a really good set, but you could
Right.
still tell that they were a newer band. But you know, a year later they've been on tour after tour after tour, and to see them now, you know, they've definitely kind of come into their own.
Sure, they found well, they you know, dude, it's you know this, man. It's when you first get out there, it's you're still dealing with everything from nerves to how to live to,
Yeah.
you know, if you're hungry or not, and if you're gonna eat today or you know, all the bullshit that
Right.
comes with being a brand new band out on the road. Now they've probably figured it all out to where it's like, okay, they know what they gotta do to show up and be ready to kill for that 30 minutes that they get.
Right.
So, you know, it's always cool when you see a band like that second or third tour in because you
Right.
see how much growth they've had.
Oh yeah. And then the obviously Lamb of God was great. Slipknot was great. I'm trying to see if there's any other bands on here that I went to watch that we watched a little bit of In This Moment. If you're into you know, theatrics and stuff, I mean that's definitely a band you got to check out. Clutch
Mhm.
was great as always too. But
Was Randy the best singer of the weekend, of course, because he's one of the top 5 of all time?
you know, it's funny as I was watching it, you know, he's conducting the crowd like exactly like
Mhm.
Art Cruz talked about, and it was funny watching him in action. And I think if you played in Lamb of God, you would say that Randy Bly is one of the top 5, you know, frontmen of all time, just because I mean he was conducting the crowd and getting everybody into it, and he actually stopped the show a couple times because he thought people were getting hurt, and
Wow,
it was a thing. It was a thing.
nice.
So Saturday was the big. It was almost like the classic rock day. You know, Kiss, Alice Cooper, Rob
Right.
Zombie. You know, so a lot of that stuff. Let's see, what did I interview that day? Dropout Kings. They were awesome. Like they're definitely kind of like a newer new metal band. You know, kind of have
Sure.
a little bit more of like a trap metal to it. Dude, Bloody Wood. I interviewed Bloody Wood. That was their first show on U.S. soil, and I mean they were on one of the side stages. They opened up that stage that day, and they just absolutely killed it. Like I was so excited to see them, and they just came out and murdered the crowd, and just like they had a few speeches in there that, you know,
Okay.
they weren't too corny. You know, they
Right.
just they 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 had a lot to say, you know, kind of a Rage
Okay.
Against the Machine-y type thing, but
Sure.
it never really crossed that line into, all right, dude, just get to the next song.
Right.
Like you could tell they meant it and things like that. And then you know, Raul, who's been on the podcast before, you know, just kind of seeing him out there and just you know, commanding the stage and things like that, man, it was just really cool to see. And then when I got back to the media tent, they were back there, and I walked it to him, and I was like, oh man, it was so awesome. And he was like, dude, you said you're gonna be here, and you're here. You know, he like knew who I was and
Nice.
stuff. So great to see those guys just kind of just coming out and just from what I heard from the tour manager and whatnot. I mean, they, you know, they're on like a I think like 15 shows in 20 days, kind of US
Okay.
tour in and out. And like they've been in the States for like 2 days before they played the show. And then they're doing like, you know, like I said, 15 shows in 20 days and then going
Wow.
home. But like all the shows are sold out or close to sold out and stuff. So I mean they're doing things, man. They're doing big things.
That's good. Good for them, man. Good look, good for anybody that's doing
Yeah.
good right now, man. You
Yeah.
know, it's a tough time, so good for them.
Right. I spoke to Craig Owens of Drugs. Drugs is one of my favorite bands. They've only put out 2 albums over like 10 years. But Craig was the singer of Chiodos too, and just one of my favorite vocalists. Even though even though I've heard some things about him, he's one of those dudes that you know, I definitely want to have on the podcast to kind of pick his brain. And he seems
Okay.
like a pretty cool guy. And he actually gave me his phone number. He's
There you
like,
go.
I was like, try to get you on the podcast. He's like, well, just take my phone number. So
Okay.
we'll see where that goes.
Right.
Uh Tetrarch was there. Tetrarch was actually there the night before. Diamond was back there hanging out because That's another thing. Maria from Maria Ferrara was there, and
Mhm.
Jamie Roberts, two massive publicists in the game.
Sure.
They were hanging out all weekend too, and it was just kind of cool to kind of meet those people in person for the first time. Maria
Sure.
just she's a handful too, running around and just taking photos with everybody and
Right.
having a good time. But Tetrarch, I guess, showed up and was hanging out with Maria, and they went to watch Slipknot all together. Obviously,
Okay.
they're big fans. And then I saw the Tetrarch folk at the in the press tent, interviewed Diamond for a little bit, and then spoke to the rest of the band. Ryan's really cool. Ryan's a listener of the podcast, so
Nice.
shout out Ryan from Tetrarch. The rest of the day here, interviewed the drummer from Chevelle. He came back on the show. That was awesome.
That's cool.
Body Count Live.
Yeah.
That was one of the more fun shows I've seen in a long
Sure.
time. Just kind of seeing that whole. I don't guess I've ever seen Body Count live, but there's a story with the Body Count CD. Not this last one, but the one before it. It got stuck in my CD player on my Jeep.
Okay.
So for the longest time, if I didn't have my phone plugged in, the only thing I could listen to was Body Count. And so that's like the album with like Black Hoodie on it and all that stuff.
Right.
And so like any of those songs they played, I knew every word, and I was just like talk shit, get shot, and all that stuff, man. I was like totally into it, man.
Nice.
The Chevelle guys couldn't have been any nicer. Both of the brothers were in the tent, being great. Didn't watch Rob Zombie. We watched a little bit of Alice Cooper, and then my favorite story of the whole night was we were done with the day, but we would go back in the media area to kind of use the bathroom and grab a drink and stuff like that, and grab waters or Red Bull or whatever. And so we were back there to use the bathroom, and where the media tent was is the buses were on one side of it and the main stage was on the other. So
Okay.
to get from one to the other, you had to go by, and it was golf carts all day long. Every once in a while you would look up and you would see a whole band drive by in a caravan
Right.
of golf carts. And so so we're sitting there and we both use the bathroom, and then we kind of walk over into the media tent, and I look over and this like herd of people all wearing this like One Kiss laminate were coming out. So they were like, I guess they paid for like the $1,000 meet and greet or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, wait a minute. So if they're coming from somewhere, they probably just did the Kiss meet and greet. So Kiss is going to have to pass us.
Right.
So we camped out close to the little driveway, the little road that goes past us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there, and I'm just trying to act cool and talk to Melissa. And I look over, and Eric Singer in full Kiss regalia too. I mean,
Nice.
they were literally going on in like 5 minutes. Like they had 5 minutes. So Eric Singer drives by, looking like Peter Criss, and I was like, man, that's cool. I was a huge Kiss fan as a kid. Still, I'm still a Kiss fan. And then all of a sudden, man, I look over, and here comes. It was the normal golf cart, but on the back of one of them was Paul and Tommy Thayer.
Okay.
And then the next one coming by had Gene Simmons on it. I mean, and they're like 6 feet away from us in full Kiss gear. And even though I didn't talk to him or like I didn't yell at him or anything like that, I was still like in my head, my 9-year-old self was just like, that's fucking Kiss. Like, and like I said, man, I mean, they literally passed us.
Right.
We walked out into the main stage area, and then it was like ban land, and they were being lowered down, onto the stage. I mean, they literally went from like backstage to the stage and boom on stage. It was crazy how quickly they got up there, man. But we stayed for about half their set, saw they saw whatever they played and kind of got out of there. But dude, that was cool to just be that close to Kiss, and
sure.
And how ridiculous that is to get excited about.
Yeah. Well, and it's the last time you're going to get that chance, probably.
Well,
I mean, they're saying they're done.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in that capacity, yeah. I mean, but they also keep adding shows to this farewell tour too. So
yeah, true.
They may never stop.
Yeah, they might not.
So that was Saturday. So Sunday we'll go. Actually, I only had one interview on Sunday. And that was Nick from Bayside. He's the bass player of Bayside, but he also does the Star Wars podcast called Thank the Maker with Adam from Story of the Year, who's been a friend of mine for a long time, been on the podcast. So when I put in for Bayside, they were like, would you like the singer or the guitar player? And I wrote it back. I was like, actually, can I talk to their bass player? And they're like, well, he's not really doing interviews that day, but we'll see if he's available. And yeah, that's what I got. But so I talked Star Wars and Bayside with them. But that was just a fun interview. I'm one of their Patreon patrons.
Oh, look at you.
So yeah, so I was like, I'm a big fan.
Nice.
That's one of those dudes where it's funny when you hear. Well, actually, this goes with another person I met that day. I met Brian from Rock Feed.
Okay.
He does a great, YouTube channel, kind of a news update channel. He used the Talk to Me podcast a few times, and he's got one of those he's got a pretty distinct voice. And so when I saw Trey from Devil's Cut, he was back there talking to Jelly Roll's drummer, and so I went up to Trey. I was talking to him, and Trey introduced me to Jelly Roll's drummer. I was like, hey man, this is the guy from Talk to Me, blah, blah, blah. And Brian goes, oh my God, you're from Talk to Me. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I'm Brian with Rock Feed. And I heard his voice. Right. And I was like, yeah, you're definitely Brian from Rock Feed. Kind of the same thing with Nick too. Cause I didn't really know what Nick looked like, but I've heard his voice a million times. But that's always funny when you meet radio personalities or podcasters that you like, you can picture their voice, but you don't ever picture their faces or whatever.
And they never look like what you think.
Right. Yeah, this Brian guy, like I've seen him a million times on his YouTube channel, and I would have never picked him out in a crowd.
Nice.
But so he was there. Obviously I spoke to Jose Mangan throughout the weekend.
Sure.
Friendly with him. Graham from Loudwire was there. He's been on the podcast before, but he actually came up and introduced himself and, nice to meet you in real life type stuff and all that. So that was cool for him to come up and say hello. And, just a few people running around from all of the different sites that were back there. Right. Spoke to Jacoby from Papa Roach for a little bit.
Right. Was that your last resort?
Oh man. Trying to see what that was that was the day. Like I did the interview with Nick from Bayside and literally just packed up my gear because I thought I was gonna get Jelly Roll, and then like I was watching so obviously Sunday Titans game. I got the NFL Sunday ticket on my phone, and I plopped down in my spot, and I was watching the game, and Jelly Roll showed up for his press tour, and I went to say something to him, and like he had like a security guard tour manager that kind of like shushed me almost, like he's like, we got to get to this, because I went to just like say hello because Jelly was on the podcast for an hour and we talked and blah blah blah. So he kind of like, we got to get to this, man. Sorry. Something like that, and then they went to do the interview round, and I had been speaking to their management about getting Jelly Roll on the podcast, and he was like, well, just go and see if he can do it while he's there. So I walked up to the security guy, and he's like, dude, he's like, I didn't mean to be rude. We're just 15 minutes late for 2 hours worth of media and blah blah blah. So they were running late and all that stuff. So I did not get a interview with Jelly Roll that day. But man, his performance was awesome. Like really? that was one where I was like, after the Nick interview, packed up my gear, ran it out to the car, came back into the festival, got over to see Jelly Roll, and dude, I was sitting there watching it, and I have never cried at a show. And during Save Me, I just started sobbing. Like Jesus. Melissa, she actually went to get a drink and she came back, and I was wearing my sunglasses and whatever else. And she looked at me and she goes, "You're crying." I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." And I was like, "Well, maybe I am." But yeah, man, that song saved me, man. It just hits me right in the feels. I don't know what it is about that damn song, but
you and everybody else.
Jesus. Well, yeah, I know, but it was like the fucking song, like just, I don't know, man. There's something about it. But yeah, so we ended up running into some friends around that time, hung out a little bit, grabbed some food. Papa Roach, they always bring it live. Trying to see what else we watched that day. Honestly, we didn't get to watch much. And then the one she had to see so bad was Incubus. Like, and I mean, like we were standing kind of far back from every other band or whatever. Dude, Incubus, she's like grabbed my arm and like she crowd killed all the way to the front of the stage. We got to like maybe 10 people back, watching Brandon Boyd and the boys up there just kind of killing it. But yeah, I mean, they were amazing. And then we left after Incubus because I have no desire to see Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Alice in Chains was on while we were leaving. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised you didn't try and hook up with Brandon Boyd. He talks a lot. He likes to do
Well,
interviews.
when I spoke to their management, they said that they've kind of had like a blanket no interviews at festivals thing all year, and they were just keeping
Okay.
it that way. I don't know if, I mean, they're a California band, so probably COVID issues or something.
Yeah, probably.
Jamie Roberts actually was trying to hook up with the tour manager and was giving him the whole, this guy really helped with the solo album, and even if they could just, say hello and grab a photo, that would be great. So she at least attempted it. So I do
Right.
appreciate her for that. But Melissa the whole weekend was just like, she was probably going to leave me if she met Brandon Boyd. And so I was like, I understand, I get it.
Right.
But yeah, she was all about it, and they tried to hook it up, and even the manager that I spoke to through email like knew who I was from the interview that we did with him, because Jamie is one to watch the interview as you're doing it, and so was the manager was also on the call.
Okay.
So he remembered that, and then obviously remembered the Dimebag Daryl pants story that kind of came from that interview. They kind of went
Right.
everywhere. So yeah, I mean, as for a louder than life experience, man, I think we had a blast, man. It was
That's
fun.
cool. Cool. Sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like a lot of work, but sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first year that I did video interviews. So we were kind of messing with stuff. The Saturday interviews, I don't think I'm going to be able to use because the audio was just garbage.
Right.
But the rest of the weekend was really good. Actually, the Bayside interview was probably the best, because the first 2 days we kind of commandeered this outdoor couch and set up the camera and just kind of sat on the couch and did the interviews. But when I rented the camera, they also like rented me these lavalier mics.
Mm-hmm.
So Saturday I did some on the grounds stuff before the festival, and what you'll see in the intro video, like, hey, these are the interviews from Louder Than Life, and did like a thing, but I had a lavalier mic on and it sounded great. Like
Right.
that sounds great. So I was like, oh, this probably won't be too bad. So I kept the lavalier mics, but then I went into the media tent and was doing the interviews with the lavalier mics as the other bands were playing. And it was picking up everything. It was just
right.
like, so you're in Seville, like just straight. So luckily, aside from Dropout Kings, all of the interviews on Saturday are people that had already been on the show before. So it wasn't, it still sucks, but it wasn't like the worst. And I'll redo the Dropout Kings interview. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna like maybe even attempt to transcribe the interviews, because I can still make out what's being said. It just sounds like crap.
Yeah. Shit happens, dude. It happens often, actually. So,
but as for a 4-day festival, I live to tell about it, and it was a good time, good weekend.
right. Well, that's cool. So what's your next one? Do you have a next one yet or not yet?
No, I don't have a next one actually, and something else just hit me too. We were, I guess that was on Thursday. We were out wandering the grounds, and I look over and I see, the Dimebag, all the Dimebag merch, and I was like,
That's right.
"Oh, I didn't know that was going to be here." So I walked over and I'm like, picked out a shirt, and as I was paying for the shirt, Rita pops up, and I'm like, "Rita," she's and I was like, you were on my podcast a while back, and she was like, I was like, told her what it was. She's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. That's when we were promoting Dime Vision or something." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Right.
that was awesome." And I asked her thoughts on the Pantera tour.
Mhm.
She said she's all for it. So I'm
Okay.
so
Well,
I'm happy to see.
If she's all for it, then who's there left to complain?
Right. She said she's been talking to Phil, and so they've obviously buried the hatchet and on all that good stuff. So
Good. Good. That'll be the next one, right? The Pantera tour.
Hell yeah. Actually, I interviewed Corey Brennan, who owns 5B, who owns Knotfest, who basically signs our checks. And as I was interviewing him, it was for his Rock Against Racism foundation,
Mhm.
I did throw out there that, how awesome it was that Pantera was going to be doing some shows, and the first shows back were going to be not fest events. And I look at the camera and I'm like, and I want to get this on tape. If you want me to go to Brazil and cover the shows, I will do that for you.
Nice.
So I had to throw that one in there. But yeah, it was
Sure.
funny. We brought money for my wife to buy stuff at the Blackcraft tent.
Mhm.
We go to the Blackcraft tent, and it's all styles from like 2 or 3 years ago and stuff she already has. So I end up going to the Dimebag tent, and I bought one shirt on Thursday. I think I bought another one on Saturday. I was like, I need another Dimebag shirt. So then I ended up actually the shirt I'm wearing now, Mortis Viventi or something like that. They were another booth there. They were selling a bunch of cool shirts, and so I bought a shirt, and we bought way too expensive, food while we were there,
Of course.
overpriced pizzas and all that good stuff.
Right. At least you didn't have to spend $16 a piece for beers or whatever.
Right? Yeah, she was drinking some sort of fruity vodka combination, man. I don't ever see my wife. My wife, like I think I've talked about in the past, she'll come home from work, have 2 beers, and be done with it. And she does. I don't ever really see her drunk or have a nice buzz going. And at one point, we were on Sunday. She was having a few drinks, and she was just had that smile, and I'm like, "You're feeling it, aren't you?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm feeling it pretty good."
Nice.
It was a good time, man.
Very good, man. Sounds like fun, man. I'm jealous a little bit.
Yeah.
Not too much, but a little bit.
Yeah. I get it. Alice Cooper opened with Feed My Frankenstein. I thought that was kind of cool.
I wouldn't have. That's that era of Alice Cooper. Not that I'm a big Alice Cooper fan at all. I'm not, but boy, that 80s era. Yee.
Yeah.
Hey, stupid, feel my Frankenstein. Oh boy, that's not my thing.
He played Hey Stupid and Poison.
Ugh.
And I was like, man, that just reminds me of like my babysitter loved that album. What was that, Trash or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had that album, and the cassette, whatever.
Right.
Anytime I hear that stuff, it just reminds me of my babysitter.
Sure. That's that era that all the purists hate.
Yeah.
All the purists hate that era.
Nice. Well, we spent an hour on that. Let's dive into a little bit of news before we get into some picks for the week.
Okay.
Let's see here. I want to talk about this one first because we obviously I just went to a festival, saw lots of laptops, heard lots of things that I knew weren't being played on stage. Man, it didn't affect it one bit. And you're definitely gonna take some things out there, and the people were playing to click tracks and a little bit of vocal enhancement here and there, and like I said, if there was a certain instrument that was you could hear but you didn't see it, obviously that's being through tracks. Tracks are just going to happen, and it made for a good weekend of music. If I was in a band that needed some enhancement, I would be fine. I would be fine with that as long as I'm playing bass and not playing bass to a track like miming to a track. I have no problem with extra noises on stage.
Right. Okay.
And the one thing that's kind of where I'm getting is Falling in Reverse has canceled a festival appearance over missing laptops, and he says it's like driving a car without an engine. And Eddie Trunk posted this big thing about, I can't believe this is where we are in music. He's like, I'm really like jokingly said that he's gonna, I'm really gonna start a band now. And every comment on there was like, dude, that's why I just like guitars, drums, bass, and vocals.
Oh, shut up.
And half of the people didn't know who Falling in Reverse were. The other half were just like, just talking shit about it. Falling in Reverse is a very electronic band. I mean, especially the new stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if they really wanted to do like a festival appearance with the old stuff, they could probably play some of the early music and be fine because it's a little bit more straight ahead rock. But the last few Falling in Reverse albums are hugely electronic.
Yeah, tell all those people that are saying that to go see Tesla. You know what? Tesla's still out there touring, and they're still giving it to you the way you want it. But I'd rather, you know, and it's funny because I've kind of changed on this. When this all first started becoming a thing, I was really kind of against it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I really was. But now I've seen so many shitty shows
Right.
that it's like, you know what? I'm fine with anything. I'm fine with replacement players. I'm fine with enhancement. I don't
Yeah.
care. If I'm dropping $75 to $200 for a ticket, I better get a goddamn good show. I don't care how it gets to be a good show, but it better be good. You know, I mean, this purist horse shit. And I'll go back to the Van Halen tour that I had to suffer through with fucking awful David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
You know, it was terrible, terrible. And it was terrible because they should have enhanced Roth immensely, but they
Right.
didn't. You know, so whatever. They can't play because their laptops got stolen or whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be like complaining that Nine Inch Nails canceled because they don't have it, or Rob Zombie.
Right.
You know,
All
of
those bands
course, all those bands have stuff, you know, to make theirs. It's part of the show. You know that going in. You know that going into Falling into Reverse. You know that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing with this, the only thing that I kept seeing that I totally agreed with was, where's the backups to all of the stuff? You know, where's the backup
Mhm.
files? Like you feel like you should have had at least
Yeah.
a falling in reverse backup plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know like how much
Maybe
much
that
of
was
the
part of maybe that was one of the laptops.
yeah. Yeah, true. I mean, I guess they could have had them together.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, they probably have one for each for each, you know, instrument or sound sequence or whatever. They probably have a laptop and a backup. If they all got stolen, then what are they going to do?
Right.
You know, there's not much they can do. I don't know. I was not. I saw that article and I was like, Eddie Trunk needs to shut the fuck up. He just embarrasses himself regular, or not necessarily embarrasses himself, but just makes himself look like the old man in the room
Yeah.
over and over again. It's like, get over it. This is the way people do it today.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, then go fucking see Dokken or Rad or Warrant. They're all playing their instruments. Go see the shit that you grew up on, dude. Because you don't know nothing about this band, and why are you complaining about it? You're never going to go see them anyway, unless you're comped anyway. So shut the fuck up.
I agree, man. This is insane. I mean, and Falling in Reverse is one of my favorite of the newer bands, and I just wanted, like, everyone in this comment section was just never heard of them. I'm like, yeah, it's because you've stopped listening to music after 1984.
Yeah, that's because the last record you bought says LA Guns on the cover. Shut up.
And I will say, when Kiss came out, they needed more laptops because Paul's voice, and I know this is a trope, Paul's voice
Terrible.
sounds so bad.
Mhm.
And I wish he would just, like, I don't know why he's even doing some of this stuff. He sang like the chorus to a song a cappella and it sounded terrible. And I'm like, if you know your voice sounds like shit,
Mhm.
stop doing that.
Yeah.
Like, sing to tracks. Like, have all the tracks you want. I'm there to see a good show and Paul doing his little dancing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, let's have a good time. Let's not have you singing choruses to songs a cappella when you can't hit any of the notes. Gene sounded amazing. And another thing, Gene's bass tone, that might have been the most amazing bass tone I've ever heard live in my life. Like, it was so crisp and clear. And, you know, Gene's known for doing the bass slides and stuff. Every bass slide just, and we're in a 70,000, 100,000 people deep festival.
Right.
And you could feel and hear everything. I'm like, man, I was honestly hoping that was not a track because of how great it sounded. It sounded just amazing.
Yeah, the people that complain about this whole thing, dude, it's like Eddie Trunk. He's the worst of the worst when it comes to this shit, because he'll complain that they're doing tracks. He'll complain if they sound like shit.
Right.
You know, he'll complain about that too. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want him to retire, or do you want to see the fucking band? You know, they're trying to give you a good show. Kiss, especially. What's a Kiss ticket cost? It's not cheap.
Right.
So what do you want to see? A shitty Kiss show for $250, $300, $400, or a good show? Do you care? Are you on? Unless you're sitting on stage, does it matter anyway? Honestly,
Right.
if you're, I don't know, let's say 100 rows deep, as I'm sure there was 10, I'm sure there was 1,000 rows of people at the show you were at, right?
Yeah.
If you were back past the front, to where it's a little distance, where you can, whatever you're looking at, you can see the whole stage and don't have to turn your head. If you're that far back, do you really know for sure if there's tracks or not? Probably not.
Right.
So get over it.
My favorite thing of the whole story was, I guess, the same day he was doing his radio show, and his radio show dropped out. And so my comment was, someone must have stole your laptop. And it's just funny how many people that need laptops to do their job, their podcast, their radio thing, have something to say about a band using a laptop for whatever. But yeah, his technology crapped out and his show went off the air.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, if you really want to take it all the way in, do you think Eddie Trunk uses a fucking vocal processor on his voice? I'll bet he does.
right.
Why doesn't he do his voice raw? Why doesn't he turn that off? Why doesn't he just yell outside and record it with a tape recorder and broadcast it over if you want it to sound real?
Right.
What a fucking hypocrite. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I'm done with him, man. It's insane. Let's go into Slipknot's Jim Root throws shade at Rage Against the Machine for telling me to do what the government tells me to do.
All right.
In a new interview with Music Radar, Slipknot guitarist Jim Root spoke about how the lyrical themes on the band's upcoming album, The End, so far have been affected by the weird cultural moment that we are living in at the moment. He said, "Everything is so bizarre and so bananas. I don't even know what's going on with the world right now. I couldn't even tell you what is going on with culture, because being locked up for 2 years and then you come out and everything is upside down. It's really, I don't get it." Where is it at here? With Rage Against the Machine, we haven't really checked in with one another to see how we're doing, how we're feeling about the state of the world and all that. But when I hear a band that's saying, "Fuck you, I won't do it," Jesus Christ.
I won't do it.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, telling me to do what the government tells me to do. That seems backwards to me.
He's not wrong.
That is not wrong.
No, he's 100% correct on that one.
And I just love the fact that Jim Root has somehow turned into the coolest looking dude in Slipknot, which we've gone over a few times.
Right.
But that's just an amazing quote to me. I'm talking about Rage Against the Machine, telling me to do what the government tells me to do.
Right. And weren't they anti-corporate too? Right up until they started charging $250 a ticket.
Right.
Jesus, anti-capitalists. Sure they are. Shut up. Another band that needs to shut the fuck up.
Well, that's like I think Rihanna has been announced as the NFL halftime player this year for the Super Bowl.
Can't wait to not hear that.
And which is funny, because during all the Colin Kaepernick stuff, she was one of the biggest people out there telling everyone to boycott the NFL. So
yeah, well,
I wonder what changed.
I don't know. Maybe like the 10 zillion streams that she'll get paid for the day after the Super Bowl.
Right.
Can't imagine.
And another story, we are huge on the Pantera reunion here.
Sure.
And everybody has kind of weighed in from so many different bands. And the one band that we needed to hear from is Nickelback. And so Chad Kroeger from Nickelback has said, as long as Philip Anselmo brings it, it's going to be great.
Wow. That's a really stepping out there with a bold statement.
Yeah, Kroeger discussed his views on the Pantera comeback in an interview with L.A. Lloyd. He said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net, "Well, selfishly, I want to see those songs performed live. When you listen to a Pantera record and you think to yourself, well, as we thought for the last, I don't know how many years since we broke up, it's like, oh, I'm never going to get to see these songs performed live again, and it's heartbreaking. So the fact the boys are getting the called in from here and there. I love Zach. I love Charlie. Great, great guys. I think the fact that they're going to get on stage and do this, all Phil has to do is get up there and crush it.
I guess Chad doesn't get the Bands in Town app when the Illegals play.
That is true.
They've played all these songs.
Yeah. They've definitely done it. And like I've said, I've seen the Illegals twice doing the Pantera set. It's fun to see, but it's still missing something. So hopefully, Rex and the boys up there are gonna pull it out.
You know what it is when they play it, when the Illegals play it? It's all down-tuned. It's all down-tuned to a tuning that Dimebag would never tune to.
Right.
Because they're a different kind of band. But, I watched the live stream through the pandemic of it, and that was good. It was enjoyable, but it was still not in the right tuning to me, but whatever. I can't wait. I don't give a shit. Everybody, all my friends that are complaining, fuck you, stay home. I'm going. I don't care. You don't want to go. You want to tell me how bad it was from your seat at your house? Go ahead. I'm going, and I'm buying the expensive tickets too. So don't be leaning on me to get freebies either. Buy your tickets.
Well, speaking of buying tickets and something I would love to go see, Metallica has announced a special concert honoring Jonny and Marcia Zazula.
Wow. When's that?
Metallica will celebrate the life, legacy, and achievements of Megaforce founder Jonny Z and his wife Marcia Zazula with a special show at the Hard Rock Live at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida on November 6th.
Okay.
That the venue holds like 7,000 people.
Okay.
And they're basically doing, I'm going to assume the way that they're talking about it, just songs from Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning.
Wow.
So it's just going to be an old school set. They got Raven opening.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're and once again, we spoke about last week, the All Within My Hands Foundation will once again be on hand supporting Feeding South Florida with a donation following the show. A portion of the proceeds of the show would be donated in Jonny and Marcia's name to Music Cares, a safety net supporting the health and welfare of the music community, offering preventative, emergency, and recovering programs to musicians and industry professionals.
Right. Dude, how fortunate were we both that we got to interview Jonny Z, literally right before his death.
Yeah, that was a crazy interview. And that was one that, talking even a little bit about Vended and those things where you don't want to just be like, so you discovered Metallica.
Yeah.
That's when you want to try to like talk about Testament and Ace Frehley and a little bit more of that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, man, just that whole story of, mortgaging the house to put out the first Metallica record stuff like that's a dude that saw something.
Dude, I one of my, how it goes with interviews. If you've had an experience with somebody before, telling them that story and seeing if they remember it or they don't remember it, as an interviewer is very selfish, but very something we all do. We all kind of do it if we catch the right guy in the right mood. And when I interviewed Jonny Z, I had the chance to tell him about when I was like 13 years old and I went to his record store. My dad took me to his record store out there in wherever it was, New York, New Jersey. And I tried to buy a Motley Crue record and he wouldn't let me buy it. And so he's like, no, buy this. And it was Raven. It was the All for One Raven album. And he was like, no, buy this one instead. And it was cool. It was cool. And I loved the album, but it was so cool to tell Jonny Z that. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like me. It was just a cool moment, man. I'm so glad that, certain ones of those guys, because you do those interviews and they don't necessarily cash in on the clicks, so to speak.
Yeah.
But if you know metal and metal history, it's like, that's about as big as it gets. Jonny Z is for me as a metal guy, Jonny Z was as big as it gets. Alago was as big as it gets.
Yeah.
Because we realize what those guys truly did for the scene even that we have now.
Right. Yeah, the quote here from Metallica is, Jonny gave us our first break in New York, released our first albums on his Megaforce label, and put us out on the road for our first real tour. With Marcia by his side, Jonny was a mentor, a manager, a label head, and a father figure to us all. We would not be here where we are today without the two of them. Sadly, we recently lost both Jonny and Marcia just a little more than a year apart. We'll be cooking up a special set list for you all full of songs from our days with Jonny and Marcia at Megaforce. Our main touring partner from that time, Raven, will also be joining us to add to the celebration and bring back the memories.
Wow, that's really, really cool.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, Metallica just gets it. Like I don't care how many millions of dollars they have. They just still understand being a fan.
Yeah, they make mistakes, and they certainly subject us to some of their mistakes with Lulu and touring with Cage the Elephant and all that. They make mistakes here and there, but in the end, as far as bands go, it's hard to really criticize them. 40 years, they've been kind of doing it right, which is why they're the biggest in the world, probably.
They get it, man. They just get it.
I'm with you.
And that was the news segment. Do you have any recommendations for the week, Chris?
One of each. TV wise, there is a show on Hulu called Candy. Stars Jessica Biel and Melanie Linsky, who was Rose on 2.5 Men, as well as she's in that show Yellow Jackets. And my favorite thing from her is when she murdered and cut this lady's arm off on The Shield, which was fantastic. It's a true to life story about this lady that was like a church lady that was accused and I'm not far enough in to know, but she may or may not have actually killed her best friend.
Okay.
But the funny thing with it is you'd never recognize Jessica Biel. It's based in 1980, so everything is the 80s hair and the 80s clothes, and you'd never recognize these people, even though they're sort of famous. But really good thing. I'm like 3-4 episodes in. It's really, really good. And then musically, I posted this on the Toomey Facebook page when you were out at Rock on the Range. But I found this band that I think it's right in your wheelhouse, but I think it's right in everybody's wheelhouse that likes what we do. It's a band called As Paradise Falls. They have an EP out called Madness Medicine. And man, it's fresh from the, I don't know, heaviness of like an Amur type of a band.
Okay.
But really, really thick, heavy music. And man, does it kick ass. It's out on a little tiny label too, a fairly tiny label, Eclipse Records.
Okay.
But man, it fucking kicks ass, man. So the band is As Paradise Falls, and the EP is Madness Medicine. Good stuff.
All right. Definitely check that out. A documentary I watched over the weekend, or actually over the last couple of days, is called 11 Minutes. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
I have not seen that one.
11 Minutes is about the country concert that was in Las Vegas that got shot up by the guy, the shooting.
Okay.
And not to be Wendell Neely on this one, but the fucking footage, like, I mean, people, I don't know if they were like I got my phone here, and they were like, if they were filming the show and then the shooting starts to happen, so they dropped their phone, but they didn't turn it off from filming.
Okay. Right.
Because people are just like running with their phone and it's filming the whole time.
Right.
And they're like getting shot and they're still filming. Like people are getting shot and still filming. Like everybody was just filming the whole thing. Like like I was around, Corey Taylor, and I forgot to get a photo. Like these people are getting shot and they're filming it. Like it didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
But
meanwhile, not one picture of the guy, right?
Yeah, I honestly have not finished it. So, but they did show where, so it's obviously it's 11 minutes. It's from I guess the beginning of the shooting to the end of the shooting is 11 minutes. This dude, man, he fucking reloads, I think 9 times.
Wow.
I mean, it's like like for a long period of time. Then there's a stop, and then he does and then they keep popping up burst to number 8 and stuff like that.
Right.
And you just hearing people just getting mowed down. And they even interviewed Jason Aldean, who was on stage at the time.
Right.
And he's talking about how he had his in-ear monitors in, and he thought it was like a short in in the system somewhere because he
Okay.
heard the clicking and the popping, but he thought
Right.
it was like like a bad cable somewhere.
Sure.
And he said at the first time he even like was getting mad at his crew, like, fucking find it,
Right.
find the
Wow.
because nobody thinks they're getting shot at.
Well, no.
And even the way they show the crowd after the first round of shots,
Mhm.
nobody really moved.
Yeah.
Nobody, everybody thought fireworks. Some people thought it was a gunfire, but they thought it was people like on the strip, like maybe
Mhm.
a gunfight on the strip. A lot of people, everyone thought fireworks at first, but then they didn't see anything. And then after the second round, I guess one of the Jason Aldean's security finally like saw him and was like, "We gotta go." And
Right.
and so like once Jason Aldean kind of stopped mid song and ran off stage, that's when everybody was like, "Oh shit, this is really something."
Right.
And yeah, they were just showing. I mean, this one girl got like her jaw shot off and stuff.
Oof.
I mean,
Ouch.
it's one thing to hear about the story, but it's another thing to kind of see the how everything went down
Right.
and all the people that they interview and I mean like one cop they interviewed, that was his first night
Oh,
as
Jesus.
a cop. And his dad was also a cop or is a cop. And they actually met up at the festival and but the cop was the rookie cop was just walking around. He ended up getting shot in the arm,
Ouch.
but then they show the once they figure out where the gunfire is coming from, the police that get up there to the room is basically where I'm at in this thing.
Right.
But I guess he had a camera, something set up to where he could see out the door. And so when the security guard got close, he actually started shooting the door, and he
Okay.
like blew like 30 rounds through the door or something
Wow.
crazy.
But that kept them away while he could
Yeah,
keep shooting out the window.
yeah, it's bananas, man.
Wow. Craziness.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously not our style of music, but still a crazy story.
Yeah. I'll
And
I'll
it,
definitely watch that. I didn't know that was even out there.
I remember seeing the when that first happened, that was like right before A Louder Than Life.
Okay.
And I remember going to Louder Than Life and kind of like you just start looking around and you're like, what?
Mhm.
Like there's really no high points where we're at. There's no hotels nearby, things like that. But it's still like, what would you do? Where
Yeah.
would you go?
Yeah, and there's nowhere to go in any of those
Mhm.
things, whether it's
No,
that or the Great White Fire or a
right,
Guns N' Roses riot or any of that stuff. If it breaks off, you just gotta do your best to get the fuck out of there. However you do it.
right. And the only music thing I was checking out today was the new album from or the new EP from Dead Cross.
Okay. Is
Looks
that
like it's
out?
called Christian Missile Crisis. There's at least 3 songs out. I
Okay.
know that there's a third one that came out today. But it's funny how the music sounds like Slayer and the vocals, which should be amazing because they're Mike Patton, almost kind of let the music down. I was kind of bummed about
Really?
the
Well,
vocals
that's
on
no
it.
good.
But the musically it's amazing.
Okay. I will check it out. Patton. Anything from Patton I'm into, so
Yeah, me too. And actually the only other blabbermouth story that I was looking at was I guess the second Taylor Hawkins tribute came out from LA. And I only watched the it's Def Leppard and Miley Cyrus and all the Foo Fighters doing Photograph.
okay.
And there's just something weirdly poetic about Pat Smear on stage with Def Leppard and Miley Cyrus playing a Def Leppard song that just like, because he was in what the Germs or whatever, and he was in
Mhm.
Nirvana, obviously, and just like, and I'm thinking about Kurt Cobain and just like how everything going on stage was like the antithesis of 90s 1991 grunge.
Right.
Def Leppard, pop, all that stuff, just all
Sure.
of it together on one stage, and to see, what's the guitar player that always has his shirt off? Uh,
Phil Collin.
Phil Collin. It's like Phil Collin and Pat Smear kind of rocking out together for a second, and there's just something beautiful about it. I don't know.
Nice. Yeah. Cobain probably wouldn't have attended this event if he was still alive.
Right? You don't think Cobain would have got out there and did Photograph with Def Leppard?
No, I don't.
But yeah, other than that, man, not much else is going on, man.
Yeah. Well, we killed an hour and 20 minutes just, you know, just talking about your weekend. So there we
Right?
go. That's good.
Yeah, and the only other thing, the interview this week was with Carson Pace of the Callous Cowboys.
Speaking of bands that sound weird.
Yeah, that's a terrible band name. I don't care how good they are.
Dallas Cowboys or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, obviously play on the Dallas Cowboys, and it's just like woof. But great fun band to listen to if you're into like the Dillinger Escape Plan and even Mike Patton type stuff. Like Mike, there's that one EP that the Dillinger Escape Plan did with Mike Patton that actually this album kind of reminds me of. It's good stuff.
I listened to it after you said you were doing the interview, and I had heard like a song or two. They remind me a lot of Dog Fashion Disco. If you want to date yourself back to the 90s, you know, that's kind of what they reminded me of them. Or what was the other band? Something municipal, something, but not municipal waste. What was anyway, it doesn't matter. It is a band that didn't go anywhere.
Mindless self-indulgence.
There you go. Nothing to do with municipal.
What is funny, you said that I still knew what you were talking about.
Right.
Yeah, make sure to go back and check out that interview. That's a good one. And then, like I said, all of the Louder Than Life interviews will start tomorrow. And then every Wednesday from pretty much the rest of the year, you'll be getting a little taste of Louder Than Life from the Talk to Me perspective.
Couldn't find the word.
I don't know. I just got tongue tied there for a second.
Nice.
But yeah, good times. All right. Well, I guess that will do it for another episode of the Talk to Me podcast here at notfest.com. And as always, I'm Joshua Toomey.
I am Satan.
And we will see you in hell.
Peace and war and death and murder.